showed the site, the location. I know most people are familiar with this location. It's a very busy corridor. There's a lot of traffic issues here during peak commute times, particularly the AM and PM, but most of all the AM. This resumed project of 315 proposed homes at this corner has a mitigation measure that they submitted as part of the project to add a trap lane that I just showed you, and it's described in my staff report. But since there is a conflict with the La Miranda Gateway Constraint Policy, we would need an exception or an amendment to that policy, or if that is not possible or allowed by the public or the boards, then there is a project variant, meaning that the 315 homes would, or apartments, excuse me, multifamily housing would still be built without the addition of this trap lane. So really the decision here is how you feel about there being a approved project already that's going to build 315 multifamily homes, either with the addition of a proposed mitigation measure, which is the trap lane, or without it. But either way, the project has been approved.
Okay, so Mike, I want to ask you a question before you proceed on the words that you just said. The role of this committee is not to comment on the project itself, merely the construction of this additional lane. Is that correct?
That is absolutely correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so just to confirm that the project has already been approved by the city of Lafayette with or without this additional lane.
Correct. With is the project approval, and without is the project variant.
Got it.
Okay. So as I mentioned, and in my staff report, there is a flow chart that basically goes through, we're at the first part of this, basically going to LPMC. There was a public commenter saying other cities should have some input on this too. As part of this process, they will. This information will be forwarded for comment to all of the other RTPCs in Contra Costa County, particularly, the cities to the north of us, Pleasant Hill, Concord, Martinez, that directly impact this corridor as well. But all of them, east, west, and north and central, will be north central, will be sent basically the same information and asked to provide comment that we would consolidate prior to eventually presenting to CCTA. We have received requests to defer this item or even do something else other than this trap lane, but I need to let everyone know that we do have an approved project, as Chair Worth just mentioned. So although there's a pending lawsuit, there isn't an injunction for staff to stop working on processing their project. So this is a part of that. The project was approved last summer. We certainly, haven't been leaning over backwards to hurriedly process anything. This is a process. Even this one point of this project is going to take multiple meetings to resolve. The submitted mitigation measure submitted is the trap lane. It's not another alternative, such as a bus lane or a carpool lane, or there are other parts to this project, for example, a shuttle to BART, that's independent of this item that we're discussing today. And there are reasons for the trap lane and against the trap lane. Added capacity will attract more traffic. It can. We all know the applications out there, Waze and others, Google Maps and so forth, that are going to basically balance out the travel times on alternate routes. Pleasant Hill Road is a Highway 24 680 alternative route. It's heavily traveled. Unfortunately, it also has two schools right near the freeway, and those are impacted by all the commute traffic, as well as, of course, the commutes to and from the schools themselves. The roadway will be even larger. It'd be more of an urban, less of a suburban type of road, and that includes, it'd be one additional lane to cross at the signalized intersection of Deer Hill Road at Pleasant Hill Road, And that is a common crossing, particularly for high school students who are dropped off across the street. So there are reasons not to have the trap lane. However, delay for local traffic can be reduced while still doing some metering for the regional traffic with signal coordination. A big discussion point was, what do we do during an emergency? There's already it's a high fire risk area. We're concerned about an emergency evacuation and the capacity of the roadway to get us out of the Pleasant Hill Road, Reelys Valley Road, Spring Hill Road corridors. And it's a valid point. During a fire, it will be chaos. And if you add this lane, you will have more capacity for evacuating that corridor. If you don't add it, you won't. And you may also still have the 315 homes that are going to be placed, at the beginning of this evacuation route, since they're right by Highway 24. So there's the advantage of having that added capacity should you need it in an emergency situation. And just finally, this lane would be built by the developer. The city isn't going to have an opportunity like this to build anything in the future if it's not built as part of this project, at least not in the near future. This is it's a tool in our toolbox, so to speak. Even 20 years from now, maybe this will look like something different than a trap lane. It may look like a different type of, a multimodal lane of some sort. I don't know. But what I do know is that, 60 years ago, Lafayette started building a lot of things around here, and they didn't master plan it so that you could add walkways, or you could add carpool lanes, or you could have other things that we're seeing now that people are requesting. And we're going to need to take advantage of lanes that are going to be within the city's control to utilize that, to potentially even add like a multi-purpose pathway in the future. And adding this lane, I believe, will help at least make that an easier process. So really the decision is, do you want the 315 homes with it or without it? And I'm not proposing an alternative right now because there isn't an alternative up for discussion. So LPMC was asked to review, provide comments, and distribute to the RTPCs, so our neighbors, and forward to SWAT, the Southwest Area Transportation Committee, the proposed amendment. So the amendment would be basically the two southbound lanes through lanes on Pleasant Hill Road, Taylor Boulevard are proposed as a gateway constraint. The gateway constraint policy would prohibit the addition of any through lanes except short link segments providing access to State Route 24. So this amendment would allow the mitigation measure proposed by the developer to be built. I think it might be a mistake if we don't allow it to be built, although there are certainly arguments for not allowing it to be built. Honestly, the developer, they still have an approved project. I understand that there's litigation trying to overturn the approved project. So either way, it'd be a moot point. So again, I just reiterate, do you want the development built with the mitigation measure of the trap lane or without it? And we're just asking to provide comments to the next regional transportation agencies so that ultimately we would get to CCTA to request an amendment to the La Miranda Action Plan. And that's my presentation.
Okay. Great, Mike, thank you. Thank you very much. I would like to first come back to the committee to see if you have any questions of staff with regards to this process. Yes, Councilmember Sauce.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I have a number of questions. And so first I want to make sure that I and we understand what our authority here is and what we're being asked to do. So first, if I have this correct, the LPMC is not the decision maker, is that right? And I invite anybody from CCTA or staff to answer, whoever feels most
right.
Able.
Yeah, because there are others that may answer some of these questions for sure. But based on our discussions, including CCTA and our attorney, that is correct. This is not the decision board.
Right, because we LPMC are just a subcommittee of SWAT, which is in turn just a subcommittee of CCTA. So both LPMC and SWAT, by definition, are simply advisory committees that provide recommendations or input to CCTA, which makes the decision. Do I have that right?
John, I've seen you come on board. Are you ready to, would you like
Sean,
to?
do you want to affirm that or speak to that?
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. John Hong, Planning Director for CCTA. Appreciate the question. Yes, I just want to confirm that CCTA board is the decision-making body in this process.
Okay, and am I correct that that this proposed amendment will move forward to SWAT and the other RTPCs regardless of what LPMC does today or does not do?
So yes, that is my understanding based on the process in the growth management plan and basically on previous versions that were edited, right? It went through the process where you seek comments of all the RTPCs, which would include SWAT, that LPMC is a subset of, before going to CCTA. So regardless of the answer, support or non-support, it would move forward.
Okay, and thanks, Mike. I appreciate that. And actually, so you bring up my next set of questions, which is, I just want to be clear on exactly what we're being asked to do, because I see different. I see a conflict between the flow chart from CCTA and what is in the staff report, and I want to make sure that I understand. So the CCTA growth management flow chart in the box that I think applies to today says LPMC committee review and make recommendation to either support or oppose to the request to amend the action plan. Do I read that? Am I reading that right?
Yes.
Okay, but then in the staff report, it says recommended action, LPMC review and approve distributing the recommended language for amending. I read that to mean that all we're being asked to do is to approve forwarding this language to SWAT and or the other RTPCs without taking a position, yay or nay, on whether we think it's a good idea.
I would say that's definitely true for recommended action 1, where it says LPMC review, provide comments, and distribute the recommended language for amending the La Miranda action plan to all the RTPCs. I guess you could read this slightly different for recommendation 2, review, provide comments, and forward the proposed amendment to SWAT. It's slightly different because LPMC is a subset of SWAT, so it basically be like a preview of SWAT, if you will. That's what LPMC is doing now, and almost like a working group or a subset of SWAT is going to look at this. So, I mean, the only difference I would put there is provide comments, right, for SWAT, and then, of course, all the LPMC members would have an opportunity to speak again as part of SWAT when this comes to them.
Okay, so let me just ask this a little bit differently. So if I'm understanding correctly, it would be one possible outcome of today's meeting is for the LPMC to say, please forward this proposed amendment to SWAT and the other RTPCs for their review and comment, but do nothing else. Provide no comment, no recommendation, no yay or nay.
And basically just defer the discussion till SWAT, it sounds like.
No, not defer, but
Okay.
simply, I mean, I'm just saying, because my understanding is we're an advisory body that, and our decision today, as I understand it, is not at all gonna affect whether this goes to SWAT or not. Or to the other RTPCs, if I have, and stop me if I've got any of this wrong. So my question is one possible scenario here is that we say, yes, we believe this should go to the RTPCs and the SWAT for their review and comment, but we are not being asked to take a position whether we recommend adoption or do not recommend adoption.
And that, then you would take a position as part of SWAT, am I understanding that correctly?
Not necessarily, because SWAT is advisory only, is not a decision maker either.
Well,
but that's we're getting ahead
Yeah.
of ourselves. I'm just trying to understand, Mike, what we're being asked to do today and what the scope of our sort of responsibility is. I'm not trying to shirk responsibility. I'm just trying to understand, because what I think I'm hearing is that we are simply being asked to forward this.
with comments. I mean, with comments that would go to
comments.
SWAT. The comments, I did not anticipate going to the other RTPCs, but just to our own RTPC, so to speak.
Okay, so just we're being asked to give comments to SWAT.
Yeah, in other words, as you mentioned, this is going to go to the RTPCs, including SWAT, kind of regardless of the discussion on this agenda item today,
Okay.
right? However, prior to going to SWAT, I would anticipate a revised staff report that would include comments from LPMC for SWAT's consideration.
Okay, but not a recommendation up or down.
No,
Okay. And Madam Chair, I don't want to monopolize all the question time. I have a few more, but if
Please proceed, please proceed. I see that David McCrae, who's general counsel for the authority, is on also. So, David, I don't know.
I just want to thank you very much, Madam Chair. I just wanted to jump in real quick and address the point that there may be a discrepancy between the flow chart and that the recommendation that the staff report was done. And no, there's no discrepancy. The flow chart is just that. It says this is how the process goes forward. So in that box that you mentioned, Vice Chair Sauce, it says that it just, again, the flow chart, that LPMC can either say, make a recommendation to support or not support. That's just the flow chart. The staff report is actually making a recommendation for the committee to consider. And the staff report is saying, go forward and approve, recommend that CCTA and the rest of them support the amendment. So I just want to make clear that there isn't a discrepancy. It actually is just one showing what the process is, and then the staff report making the recommendation.
Okay, so David, I'm sorry. Now I'm confused because you just said the opposite of what Mike said. What I understood initially, and I believe to be the case, is that our job is not to recommend an up or down on the amendment, but simply forward it to SWAT and the RTPCs with any comments that we choose to make about the pros and cons of making such an amendment. That's what I understood.
So we're still saying two different things. Your question about there being a discrepancy between the flow chart and the staff recommendation, the staff report. What I'm saying is there is no discrepancy there. I just want that on the record. There is no discrepancy. The flow chart just shows how the flow chart works. And staff's made it. Now, you could go to the other regional committees, and you're just per the growth management plan, the implementation growth management plan, section 3.2 and 3.3. It outlines exactly how this process is to go forward, and that this amendment that is being proposed goes to the others to consider, because this is also going to be part of the county-wide transportation plan. So everybody else has to have a look at this, and this is basically a requirement to make sure that there's no missteps with everybody's planning and moving forward here. So that's why CCTA is also involved, is because they have to say, yes, there's also going to be an amendment, then this will be adopted into the county-wide transportation plan. So at this point, it's what the LPMC committee was saying. It's LPMC committee is saying, yes, we recommend that either the amendment take place or that the amendment not take place. But just the amendment itself, as Mike is saying, just sharing it with the others without any other let's say administrative comment, that's not inappropriate either. So I agree with what he's saying. I just really, for the record, make sure that there doesn't seem to be a discrepancy between what the flow chart is and what Mike is actually saying.
Okay, that's fair enough. Thank you. So the last time the La Miranda action plan was amended was 2014. Is that right?
I think it's 2017, actually. Is it
2000?
I'm sorry. I'll have to...
It was actually on that chart.
Yeah.
It's on the chart.
2017.
2017. Okay. Okay. And so because my understanding is that this issue came before LPMC, the issue of the trap lane came before LPMC in 2013. And the LPMC identified the conflict between the trap lane and the gateway constraint policy in the La Miranda action plan. And since that time, there was at least an amendment in 2017, and then I have a 2014 La Miranda action plan, so I don't know what I'm looking at. But in any event, was this proposed amendment considered in connection with any updates that occurred to the La Miranda action plan after the issue of the conflict was identified in 2013?
I can't speak to that because I don't have any internal knowledge. I don't know if there's anyone else in the Zoom that would know if that item was specifically considered during the 2017 amendment.
Let me just ask, does anybody else on this call have any knowledge about the 2017 update, how that may have referenced this language and the 2013 LPMC discussion of the language, the gateway constraint policy?
That's fine, Amy.
Did you were you raising your hand? I just, yeah, go ahead.
I just was wondering, I don't know, Matt Kelly has his hand up. Thank you, Matt. Matt Kelly's in the attendees and probably should potentially be over here.
Oh, perfect. Welcome, Matt.
Can you guys hear me?
We sure can.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Okay.
Welcome to the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. So you're right, in 2013, the project and the potential conflict were brought forward to LPMC as, just to flag it that this project is going in front of the city and there may be potential issues with the action plan. The 2014 date that Member Sauce was referencing is we originally were going to adopt the plans, which started in about 2012, 2013 in 2014, but then those were deferred until 2017 for final adoption. So they did have two dates. So you're correct there. But basically the 2014 plans became the 2017. With very minor changes. So at the time of the 2014 and 2017 plans, the project and the potential conflicts were daylighted, and I don't remember, when the 2017 adoption took place, if it was brought into the actual conversation, but at least the project was, somewhere in the background, but it's gone through, various stages since then. So it may have been at an ebb when the action plan was actually, I'll say adopted by SWAT, but basically SWAT, recommends to CCTA adopting it and incorporating it into the countywide transit.
Thank you. And is there an upcoming update to the Loma Linda Action Plan?
Yeah, so John and I, the planning department, are prepping for a 2021. Oh, that's this year. Wow. 2021.
Surprise, yeah.
It was always next year. Yeah, later this year, mid to late 2021, we will begin updating all 5 of the action plans.
Okay. And Amy, I just have 2 more questions. My apologies let's just say hypothetically CCTA chooses to amend the Loma Linda Action Plan to permit the trap lane. Is the developer then required to build it, or is it a possible scenario that it will not get built?
So,
In other words, could there be
yeah,
an
my understanding.
amendment without the trap lane actually happening?
Yeah. So my understanding is, and this is built into their condition, their mitigation measures, is that if it is amended or there is an exception to allow this, that the trap lane will be built, just like a condition of approval. It could be tied to occupancy, for example, so that there's a hammer on it being built. So, and Rob, maybe you could, Rob Hodell could speak to that to just at least affirm what I said.
Yes, it's the mitigation measure provides that the project variant without it would only go forward if the gateway constraint policy is not amended to allow the third trap lane. So,
Rob, would you be so kind as to introduce yourself?
oh yes, I apologize. I'm Rob Hodel, counsel to City of Lafayette with respect to
Thank you.
to anything having to do with the terraces project.
Okay.
I'm with a firm called Cobham's Patch Duffy in Basque.
Thank you
Oh,
for your comment.
excellent firm. I've been up against you guys in the past. And I won't say who won. And Matt, I think I have one question for you, as you seem to be the historian on the Loma Linda Action Plan. Have we in the past amended it or made any changes to it in response to a particular development proposal?
That I'm aware of, I don't know that it was ever done for a particular development. It may have been done with an eye for, a development or a group of developments, but I'm not aware of a situation like this. But my history only goes back so far.
And will the Amy, see, I said only 2.
Oh, no, we're
got
not.
a third one. In the upcoming 2021 revision that is going to be worked on, Matt, will that include looking at the plan through the lens of the regional housing allocations that are being pushed down by the state to the Loma Linda municipalities? Is that going to be part of the effort?
Yeah, we always take a look at the latest housing and jobs projections for each city and the region. So yes, we would use all the updated information we have from the state and MTC.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, appreciate you indulging me. I'm done, Amy.
Okay, Renata, well, thank you. And if you think of anything else as we go forward, don't hesitate to raise your hand. Let me turn to Councilmember Geringer.
So just as a follow-up, if I want to make sure I was understanding, and Matt, this is back to you and following on Vice Chair Sauce's question. So if I understood it correctly, it was, has the action plan ever been changed because of a development or a series of developments and you didn't have a recollection? Do we have, and I believe you were just referring to the Loma Linda Action Plan, but there are action plans for all of the RTPCs. Has this type of amendment happened in any of the other action plans or with any of the other cities or action plans, even with within SWAT. So for example, well, anyway, so do you have any knowledge of this being, amendments being requested and either, denied or put forward?
Not specifically as part of an action plan update or amendment. The growth management program does look at developments, through the urban limit line and things like that, but not specifically, in my recollection, as part of an action plan update or amendment.
Sorry, thank you. And that's all the questions I have right now. I may have more after the public comment.
Great, just to confirm the process, what we're doing is we've received a staff report, we're now entertaining committee questions. Once we complete that process, then we will go to the public comment period, but we're still in the question period. So I guess I'd like to come back to, if I may, following up on Councilmember Sauce's questions with regards to the authority that this committee has. Clearly, in looking at the flow chart, the authority for the decision rests with the Transportation Authority Board itself, as I understand it, that all of the decisions up until that point are advisory. I guess I'm still trying to understand the action that we potentially would make today. Again, do we pass is it under the staff report seems to indicate that we would review, provide comments, and just recommend distributing the recommended language to the RTPCs. Number 2 is review, provide comments, and forward the proposed amendments to SWAT for their consideration. And then 3, LPMC would review, provide comments, and forward the proposed request that SWAT review the request to allow the construction of the proposed southbound track lane. So what I just want to understand that those are the recommendations from our staff. That is what you are asking us to do. So what I see is what you want us to do is to look at the information, take public comment, make any comments, and then forward it on. There's not an up or down. We just forward on our comments. Am I following that correctly?
That is correct. Basically, you're making advisory comments, right, as an advisory board.
Okay.
And ultimately, so would SWAT and the RTPCs.
Okay.
They would all be making advisory comments based on the proposal
Right.
of the amendment.
So our comments are really more qualitative or whatever they are. It's not, they're about, you're going to get feedback from the public and from the committee, and then that would be incorporated in what we would forward on to SWAT.
That's
Okay.
correct. And then ultimately CCTA.
Right. Well, CCTA would have its own decision-making
Right.
discussion process. Okay, and that is the Lafayette, we're saying that's the recommendation that's coming from the city, the Lafayette staff, correct?
That's correct. All of them are reading to review, provide comments, and distribute or forward.
Okay,
Right.
all right. Okay, great, Mike. Well, thank you so much. So let me just go back, and I appreciated your comment. Obviously, this is coming to us in the context of the Transportation Authority's growth management plan that was approved by the voters, and we are following those procedures. My question, I think, that would be helpful as we go through this whole process would be, again, for you to articulate. We've read all the materials that are from the public. We've read the letters that we've received. We've spent a lot of time, I'm sure, individually looking at what our processes are. I wonder if it would be really helpful if you might be able to articulate what were the reasons that the Lafayette Council or that the Lafayette staff recommended to the Lafayette Council that the approval of this project include the construction of this truck lane from a traffic management standpoint? I think that would be really helpful if you might just be able to reiterate from the standpoint of as it relates to traffic management, CCTA, our growth management plan and procedures, what were the essence of why that the staff was recommending that this be incorporated? this traffic be incorporated as a part of this project.
I mean, so,
Recognizing that, just a second, let me finish, I'm sorry. Recognizing that the city of Lafayette made a decision to approve the project regardless of whether the traffic lane were included or not. But I think it would be helpful for us to, again, to have you reiterate from an engineering standpoint and a traffic safety standpoint, what was the element why this traffic lane was recommended?
so it's mostly to just mitigate the impacts from the development. And when they went through a process to say, well, can we mitigate traffic impacts in the AM peak southbound direction? This lane will do that. There'll be more delay over time, and there's already delay, at least during non-COVID times, in the AM commute. So, but another big item is that added capacity will help during an evacuation scenario.
Okay.
And so those are existing downfalls of this corridor. There's already horrific traffic during commute times, at least at certain times of the year. And there's already, backed up traffic and concern that we cannot evacuate, quickly enough should we have an emergency such as a fire or an earthquake or so forth. So this lane will help those things. You'll have increased delay over time if the lane isn't built, but it could still be allowed. It's still an approved project and you would just go with the project variant. Those are the biggest things. But just from an engineering functionality point of view, I don't even know exactly what you would use this for, but if you give more public right-of-way to the public to use for public use, we'll have more options in the future. I wasn't able to change the timing of the signal at Deer Hill and Pleasant Hill Road and help the high school commute in the morning. I worked with technicians and others that know a lot about that, and we couldn't improve the conditions because we basically had saturated conditions in opposite directions, right? I had multiple directions needing extended green times to help the traffic, and you can't do that because they're conflicting. So we're at the capacity we have, so we don't have tools to improve it at all. This trap lane will at least provide a tool in the future to improve it.
So
I don't know what it'll look like, but
So I guess what I'm trying to understand, and again, I'm not an engineer and I'm not a lawyer, and I'm fortunate that we have both on this committee. So, but let me ask you, so the way you contemplate is people exiting, looking at this map, what they would do is they would exit Deer Hill and say people getting onto the freeway, for example, would exit Deer Hill, they'd make a right-hand turn, and rather than having to go into the two traffic lanes, there would be this third lane that would enable those cars to go straight onto the freeway. And then the cars that are coming from farther north that say are coming down to go into Lafayette, into Stanley, those kinds of things would continue on. Is that basically the thought process, that the
that's correct.
Deer Hill wouldn't have to enter the lane?
That's correct. And people from the development could exit right onto Pleasant Hill Road, wouldn't even have to go up onto Deer Hill and impact that signal.
Wait, say that again.
So there's an exit. If you're going from the new development, there's exits on Deer Hill Road and on Pleasant Hill Road.
Right, I see those.
Yeah, so if you're coming from the development itself,
Right.
you could choose either of those routes. But my point was you could bypass the signal at Deer Hill and Pleasant Hill altogether if you come out of the driveway on Pleasant Hill Road from the development.
Okay, so that would draw people away from the high school intersection.
Right.
So I guess the question is kind of like an auxiliary lane on a freeway then, where you have on and off traffic, and then it allows a free flowing traffic on the other lanes, right?
It is.
Minimizes that. Okay. All right. And then also, as you said, it provides capacity for evacuation. That was the other
That's correct.
thing you talked about. Okay. All right. So let me ask if there are any other questions. Or if not, then I would look forward to hearing from the public. And let's see. Let me begin. Jason, you and I and Siva can kind of follow this together to make sure that we have all the public comment that we received. So I see the first speaker is Carl DiGiorgio. Welcome. to our meeting. And everybody, just want to report that, just reiterate that everybody has 3 minutes to speak, and I know that our staff will be keeping track of the time. So thank you very much.
Yes, hello.
Carl, please go ahead and speak.
Hello. Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Welcome.
Okay, so I'm speaking as a private citizen, resident of Northeast Lafayette. Overall, I'm okay with lane improvements, but I'd like to know if the LPMC recommendations could include a condition somehow that total AM southbound Pleasant Hill Road volumes not exceed current levels. And that is to say, is there a way to require use of metering lights so that traffic isn't incentivized to bypass the freeways? So my question ultimately is for CCTA staff. Can a condition be incorporated into the revised La Miranda action plan that would make sure that total volume flows southbound not increase? Thank you.
Thank you very much. And what we're going to do is we're going to take all the questions, and then I will ask staff to respond to them when we complete the public comment period. And I'm taking notes, and I know that some of our staff members and colleagues are going to be taking notes. So if you all can help me make sure that we get all those questions answered. So thank you very much, Carl. We will get an answer to your question. The next speaker is Jennifer Paul.
I'm not able to allow Jennifer Paul to speak because they're using an older version of Zoom. I'm going to temporarily promote them as a panelist. I believe that will allow them to speak. Just give me 1 second. Jennifer, you should be able to speak now.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can. Welcome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Just a few comments today. I did send in 2 letters, but I wanted to say the La Miranda Action Plan has a process flow chart that I saw was different than the flow chart that was presented in the staff report from CCTA. And the way that I read the La Miranda Action review process for La Miranda General Plan amendments and projects is when you have project that's going to be over 100 trips, this would be that all the RTPCs in the area have to be notified first, and then you would agree to a joint meeting. So I just would like that flow chart to be addressed. As I also stated in the letter, the gateway constraint policy, I don't think should be changed, and certainly not based solely on the Terraces project as the agenda item makes it as such. The project is currently involved in a lawsuit, so I think we should be doing this after and defer this decision. In 2013, the firm TJKM studied the addition of a southbound lane, and beyond the obvious that it conflicted with the gateway constraint policy, they found several negative potential impacts. They studied it again in 2017. They said the change would not have any material benefit on southbound movement. In 2020, TJKM studied this yet again, and they stated, quote, adding more capacity for southbound through movement and deal does have the potential to increase speeds upstream and attract more drivers onto the corridor. Initial simulations using sim traffic suggest that this would be the case. As such, the proposed lane may violate both the letter and spirit of the gateway constraints policy, end quote. The way I read it too, it says that the gateway constraint policy was implemented to limit the impact to residents. And I feel that the amendment to add this lane would do just the opposite. In closing, I want to say that residents should be given much better notice about the meetings. Input from community is vital, and this meeting should have been posted in various ways, such as on Nextdoor and via better city communication. I asked in a letter that I sent in December, you consider placing A-frame boards up, which the city of Lafayette has done for notices about the terraces at the intersection of Pleasant Hill Road and Deer Hill Road at Stanley. For any future meetings involving this intersection, and it is a route of regional significance. Thank you.
Great, Jennifer, thank you. Thank you very much for your comments.
Thank you.
And I will respond to your question about the, okay, our next,
I was gonna say, oh, I had something, shoot,
all right, Kristen is our next speaker, please.
Hi there. I think there was going to be something screen shared if Jason is listening.
Yes, Christian, just give me 1 second. I'm going to pull it out.
Thank you, Jason. As you guys are watching this video, go ahead and start the video. I just want to briefly mention this is traffic on the left going southbound in the morning, and we'll follow it for a minute. You guys can watch that. I want the traffic on the left, that is. I wanted to mention that real quick while we're reviewing this, that Mike Moran had mentioned something, how will this fix, that this lane will basically help with evacuation. I want to point out that residents paid for Elite Transportation Group to do an analysis of evacuation from the terraces. And I believe that it takes something around an hour to be able to get a third of the residences out of the terraces in the trap lane. So an hour in an evacuation to get a third of the residents out of the trap lane. You guys can refer to Elite Transportation Group if this concerns you. But I just wanted to mention that. Go ahead and stop the video, Jason, please. You guys get the picture on that. I wanted to reference my letter that I sent to you guys. There's some pictures that I sent all of you on what the average commute days look like on Deer Hill Road and Release Valley Road, and you can see pictures, if Jason can put them up there, that are 3 miles deep of traffic, bumper to bumper traffic on these side streets getting to Pleasant Hill Road. It's a complete mess. We've had all kinds of letters that have also been sent to you from the principals and the bus company pleading for help with this traffic. This is Release Valley Road. Go ahead, Jason, next picture. This is Release Valley Road also. This is about 3 miles from the intersection of Deer Hill and Pleasant Hill Road. You can find more videos and pictures on Facebook. And my point in showing you guys all this is because, and Jason, if you go to the last page or so of my writing, stop here, Jason. That crosswalk picture. These people in the crosswalks are not there currently. So it's important for you guys to realize that any right-hand turners are going to be stopped for new people in the crosswalks. These are all new kids that are going to come here from the Deer Hill project, and they're not there currently. So,
Kristen, can I pause you for 1 second? Chair, the 3-minute time is up. Just wanted to let you know.
Thank you, Kristen. Could you please wrap up your comments?
Sure. Go to the last page, Jason, please. I just want to give you guys the specific, I'm sorry, second to the last page. I want to give you guys knowledge that the public knows what the La Miranda Action Plan says and how growth is supposed to be dealt with. And adding solo lanes isn't how growth is supposed to be dealt with. It goes against several pages of your La Miranda Action Plan, in which you guys specify since 1995 how you're going to deal with growth in the area. And so it just perplexes me that we would be having this conversation today. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Kristen, thank you for your comments and thank you for sending in the clips and the photos. So I appreciate it. I want to thank staff for arranging to show that. So it's very helpful. Now let me just turn to see if there, yeah, so.
Meredith, I just want to quickly mention, I do have a question through the Q&A.
Okay.
It's from Paul Melmed. It says, the question goes, when does the public get to make their recommendations to SWAT?
That's what this was. This is the public comment. That's why I saw that. That's why I reiterated earlier what our process is. So we've had the public comment period. Okay. So any ideas would come through public comment. Is there any additional public comment?
Yeah, there is one more on the chat section. I also want to just quickly mention, although we didn't turn off the Q&A and the chat option, that was not really the intent of receiving public comments. So if any public would like to speak, please go ahead and raise your hands and we'll be able to allow you to speak. Now I'll go ahead and read the comment. As a private citizen, resident of Northeast Lafayette, overall, I am okay with the lane improvements. However, I would like to know if LPMC recommendations could include a condition, the total lane and outbound PHR volumes not exceed current levels. This is required use of metering of lights so that traffic isn't incentivized to bypass freeways. So my question ultimately for CCTA staff would be, can such a condition be incorporated into the revised La Miranda Action Plan? This is from Carl D. Giorgio. I believe he also spoke.
Great, Cindy, thank you. Thank you very much. Yes. So first of all, let me just ask, let me take that and ask if there's any more public comment on this item.
Nothing online.
I don't see anything on my email system, Chair.
And I don't see anything looking at the attendee list. I don't see any other names, and I don't think staff, you don't see anybody else calling in, for example. Okay.
No, I do not.
All right, great. Well, thank you. Well, that was the first question then, Carl's, I had written down also to answer, and how nice he's written it out. So we can have Matt or whoever would like to respond to that question with regards to the conditions on the action plan.
Thank you, Chair Worth. Yeah, I'll just briefly respond to that. The action plan amendment can look whatever LPMC wants it to look like. So CCTA is certainly not weighing in today. We weigh in down the road once it's passed on, to SWAT and then ultimately recommended to the authority. So LPMC has the discretion to amend action plan however they deem fit.
Okay. So let me just turn then to Mike. Is it your understanding that any recommended change to the action plan would be one within the scope of this committee, as well as it would be, preceded by significant staff work to bring this recommended change to this committee and then forwarding on through SWAT to the authority?
Yes, I mean, there's still, even if this amendment is made, there's still a constraint policy and it's in place to try and prevent, regional traffic from being drawn in. So you'd still work with the other means in place. This is a localized addition. And we're trying, and it's true, we're looking at a workaround within the localized area to try and help the localized area, right? But we would still consider the regional implications of this and would try and have metering and other things. But there are limitations to that too.
Okay, all right, great, thank you. So then the next question, Jennifer Paul raised was with regards to the other part of this process. We obviously have the Lafayette Action Plan, but then we also have within our growth management plan, again approved by the voters, in our regional transportation plan, a process where if a jurisdiction, any of our jurisdictions has a project that has a certain trip threshold, then it would be brought to LPMC. And it's my understanding that that is the extent of the project comes to LPMC. So could staff reiterate that policy, number one, and two, how that was implemented in this with this project?
Well, this project did come to LPMC and SWAT twice, actually, is my understanding. And it's been years apart, right? Once was just recently, like 2019, and one goes back to maybe 2013. So that's the extent, because of, as you mentioned, this project tripped a threshold, right? A certain number of trips per day. So
okay, so let me just clarify then, Matt, you may be able to offer some clarification in terms of what is the extent of the review of a project in this context. Who does it?
Yeah, and just for clarification for the person who asked the question, there are multiple flow charts for different processes. So there is a process for GPAs, which are projects above a certain threshold. Mike is right. This project has gone through that process more than once, but initially in 2013, part of the initial EIR, I believe. So it was circulated then, and then the flow chart that's in this staff report is about amendments to the overall action plan, not about project.
So Matt, if I could just clarify with you or with Mike or Greg or whoever can answer this question, is it the growth management plan contemplates that cities need to consult with the other cities in these specific areas. So for example, for the purposes of this project, the appropriate consulting body would be the other La Miranda cities, correct? In terms of the growth management, the trip generation trigger. Who reviews that? Is it SWAT and LPMC, or is it just LPMC?
Yeah, it would be the jurisdiction within LPMC, and generally the upstream jurisdictions are notified as well as part of the review process.
Okay. But the formal review happens with the La Miranda cities, and that's consistent in the other areas where you have the. Okay. Are there any? Okay. With that, then, well, I've closed the public comment. We're back to the committee discussion. Any further questions? Let me start out with asking if there are any additional. If I've got all the questions, if those of you, is there anything else that we need to answer with regards to the public comment? Okay. So then my next question is, colleagues, do you have any other questions to address our staff? And again, I want to thank all the staff members that are here. I appreciate the local staff that are here from the various cities, as well as the Transportation Authority. Dave McCrae, General Counsel, and Matt Kelly is our and John Hall is our staff, who are very well versed in the processes of the Transportation Authority and our regional transportation plan. So I really appreciate all of you being on the call today to provide answers for any questions that we have and help in the guidance of our the discussion and our process here. So with that, I guess I'd like to ask staff to reiterate, well, let's just, first of all, are there any comments, additional comments from the committee? Okay, then staff, if I may turn, Mike, if you would like to reiterate, I see that you have 3 actions that you're proposing in this staff report. I wondered if you could, again, go through the 3 of them and indicate what you are asking this committee to do today.
Okay, correct. So in recommended action 1, LPMC review, provide comments, and distribute the recommended language for amending the La Miranda Action Plan to all of the regional transportation planning committees within Contra Costa County for comment.
Okay.
So that is really please send out to the other RTPCs the request to comment on the law on amending the gateway constraint policy.
Okay.
That's the first one. The second one is somewhat like it, only it's related to just to SWAT. LPMC review, provide, and forward to SWAT for their review of the request to amend the La Miranda Action Gateway Constraint Policy, and then it gives specific language for what that amendment would look like.
Okay. Okay, and I assume that applies to number 1 also.
It does.
Okay. Okay.
And then the third is LPMC review, provide comments, and forward the proposed request. That SWAT review the request to allow construction of the proposed southbound trap lane. So this is more like a referral of a referral. We're asking SWAT to kick this up to CCTA because they are also just recommending.
Oh, okay, that's the difference. Okay.
Okay. So we're formally asking SWAT at some point to submit this to CCTA because otherwise there's a step in between that LPMC would be missing.
Okay. All right. Okay. So that being said, okay, so in a requested SWAT, well, that all it says was requested SWAT review the request. Isn't that what you've? Okay, so the first thing is you're asking this committee to review, provide comments, and distribute the language to the other RTPCs. Number 2 is you're asking us to review, provide comments, and forward the proposed amendment to SWAT. And
Right.
3, you're asking that SWAT review the request and consider it. That's really what it says. It doesn't say
That's
what we're
correct.
asking SWAT to do. We're just really asking SWAT to review it and consider it.
Actually, that is correct. I
Okay.
stand corrected.
That's
So
great.
it doesn't go beyond that.
Yeah, okay, terrific, that makes sense. Okay, so I guess the first thing then, we've reviewed it, and now the next piece, I think that the staff report has asked us if we have any comments with regards to this request to incorporate. So do members of the committee have any comments to provide?
I think so. And I don't know if they go under 1 or 2.
That's fine. I think it's all gonna be pretty much, if we proceed forward with, well, it sounds like, again, regardless of what this committee does, is the staff recommendation, we're really, well, yes, so I think so. I think it would be appropriate wherever it applies. Absolutely, make the comments and it can be incorporated wherever it's appropriate.
I mean, I guess Amy and Teresa, I see 2 issues here, right? One is one that I believe that this is not what our before us is the trap lane a good idea? That I believe has been decided in connection with the approval process that the city of Lafayette went through for however long and with all the input, and that decision has been made. So I don't know if it is within our purview to comment on that, other than perhaps to forward the slide that Mike shared with us, which I believe was slide 6, sort of the pros and cons slide of the trap lane. The second issue, which I believe is the one that is before us, is the question of, from a policy standpoint, does one amend the La Miranda Action Plan to accommodate a specific feature of one development in the jurisdiction? And on that, I think that, I mean, there are, of course, a lot of arguments back and forth with respect to that, and some of the questions I asked were meant to tease that out. One, is there precedent for doing that? And my understanding is there's not. And then two is, when you make an amendment to an action plan, one would expect and hope that the amendment would be consistent with the underlying goals and policies of the action plan. And that is something that has not been really developed in the record that at least we have in front of us. Mm-hmm. I would hope that it would be developed going forward. But I think it's an important question. I know some of the public commentators have mentioned it, and I think that if the goals mean something, then I think they need to help guide the decision making down the road. Those are my comments for now.
Okay, great, thank you.
Oh, and I'm sorry. One more.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, Teresa. My apologies. I guess, and further to that, the question is, as a matter of policy, does one do this in response to a development, or does one do an amendment in connection with an upcoming revision to the action plan, which will presumably include consideration of the facts and circumstances before us right now and current conditions in the La Miranda area.
So Renata, can I just clarify what your question is? Is it appropriate to make this decision now, or is it one that also could be incorporated in an overall update that's
correct
contemplating happening now?
Yes.
Okay. All right, great. Okay. Teresa?
No, thank you, Renata, for all of these pieces. So I think that this is something that I absolutely agree on, looking at the underlying goals. I think it's a question also for staff on timing of this, in terms of how SWAT looks at it and the other questions. Are there specific questions that you had? I guess specific things you would like staff to take forward to SWAT, assuming that we're going to say this should continue the process. Are there specific questions that we would be putting in there, other than, is it part of this one development, or is it, since it's in 2021, all of the RTPCs are going through their action plans updates? Is it something that timing, it could go in that process? So I guess, what are the specifics that we're sending forward?
Are you asking me, Teresa? Okay.
Where are we?
I guess where I am is that we send do one, right, which is, although I wouldn't say recommended language, because that sounds like a value judgment to me that we recommended, which I am not in favor of us recommending or not recommending the language. I believe that our role is advisory, and I think as a policy matter, that is we're not in a position to do that. So I would propose that we forward this to SWAT and the RTPCs without comment for their consideration. On two, I would propose we send it to, as I understand it, we send SWAT the language and provide comments and any thoughts. I think I have that right, Chairworth. And so I think I would say we send it to SWAT again with this is the language without a commentary on whether we believe it's appropriate or not.
Yeah.
And then consider whether we add some comments and the things that one could say, but this may be just stating the obvious, is there's a policy question here of whether one amends, whether it's the Loma Linda Action Plan or any other, sub-regional action plan, a gateway constraint policy in response to a specific development. And then three is we would then just request that SWAT forward the consideration of this item to CCTA and provide any comments that SWAT may have with respect to the proposed language.
In other words, we request, just to confirm, we would request that SWAT forward we really want them to review it, and then presumably they would make the decision to forward on with any comments.
Yes, yeah, and that would be another opportunity, just in response to something someone asked, I believe, in the chat, that is another opportunity for public comment on the matter is before SWAT, and then again with CCTA. So there's at least two more bites at this apple.
And then also this would be agendized by the other three RTPCs.
Correct.
County Transplan, Transpac, which includes Pleasant Hill and Martinez, and then WICTAC, which would include the West County cities.
Right.
Okay, all righty. So, Teresa?
Yeah, I was just going to say, is that a motion?
Okay, well,
Yeah,
I mean, if you would concur with that, as I would also, I would concur with that motion in that direction.
Second, Geringer.
Okay. So Renata, you said it so beautifully. The first time, would you mind saying it so eloquently another time so we make sure? I just want to make sure our staff gets it. I think it's very, very clear.
I guess just one question, Chairworth and Councilmember Geringer. Do you guys, on number 2, do you want to provide any comments, or do we just forward it to SWAT with a request for review?
I think the comments and I took notes as well and can share with staff, although I'm sure they have a recording as well that they can go back to. But I think the points that you made about potentially moving forward the sort of pros and cons, and I guess I imagine that staff, Mike Moran, will do this presentation again along the various places, the RTPCs and SWAT and CCTA. But I think the policy standpoint questions that you brought up relative to the one jurisdiction and tying to underlying goals of the action plan, I think is good information to send forward. And then also the point about timing. And so, as you said, it's kind of those, they may seem obvious, but I love the way that you analyzed this. So I think that those comments going forward would be appropriate. And it doesn't change the yay or nay of the action, the up or down vote on it of the action.
I would concur. I think those are the salient points. And so if we pass on the sheet that has the pros and cons, as well as we've added the policy question relative to the timing, relative to one, either the goals of the action plan, consistency with this request, and then two, the timing relative to the overall revision of all the action plans. Okay.
Okay. All right, do you want me to restate it then?
That would be great. That would be great, because I know that our staff will be working to make sure that this motion correctly reflects what we are intending. So that'd be great. Renata, if you wouldn't mind, I really appreciate it. It was, yeah, perfect.
First, we request that the proposed language for amending the Lamarinda action plan be distributed to the RTPCs for their review and comment. Two is that we forward to SWAT the proposed amendment to the Lamarinda action plan for SWAT's review, and include in that transmittal the following LPMC observations. One is the pros and cons, slide 6 of the staff report regarding the pros and cons of the trap lane. And then two, the policy / timing question of whether an amendment should be taken in the context of a response to a particular development, or whether it should be taken up as part of an overall revision to the Lamarinda action plan and the plans of the other RTPCs in 2021. And then three, that we request SWAT to, after its review of the proposed language, to forward.
I think that we get to stop there. I think do you think we can request them? I think we decided we were going to stop there.
Okay, sorry. Then that's the end.
I think that's it. Unless you want to, but I think what we clarified that we would forward this to SWAT and request that they review. It's basically a reiteration of two, I think.
Yeah. Yep. Okay, that's my motion.
Okay, great.
Second.
All right. So that, just to clarify the ending, I'm sorry, I didn't want to cut you off, but I think that's where we were. That, in other words, then we forward this information to SWAT and request that they review it.
Yes.
So, okay, and that motion has been made by Councilmember Sauce, and again, thank you. And that is seconded by Councilmember Beeringer. So is there any further discussion on this? Okay, let me turn to staff to make sure that we have provided the direction that you need relative to this item.
Thank you. No, I understand the motion.
Okay, great. All right, Mike, thank you. And Jason, thank you very much. And Brett, I just really want to thank our SWAT tech group. And so with that, Jason, may I turn to you to call for the roll on the motion?
Yes, Chair. Committee Member Geringer,
Aye.
Vice Chair Sauce,
Yes.
Chair Ward.
Aye. Okay, great. Well, to report that motion carries unanimously. Well, again, I want to thank all the public for their input and thoughtful comments that we received in writing and orally today, and in video. That was the first to get, and that was great to see that. So with that, and thank you to all of our staff who've worked so hard on this, again, at the authority and also on our three Lamarinda cities. I greatly appreciate your work on this. So with that, we will adjourn the meeting of the Lamarinda Program Management Committee to our next meeting, which will be Monday, February 1st at 2021 at 1:30 in the afternoon. And at this point, we will be on the Zoom. So thank you. All right, with that, the meeting is adjourned.
Thanks, everyone.
Everyone.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you. You too.